What's up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Draft Dynasty channel. I'm back. I took a little bit of a break. I was hunting real hard trying to find those little hidden gems, and at this point of the draft they are getting pretty hard to find because most of the good ones are already well known. People know about them. So I had a lot of fun trying to find one player that I really like, and I searched in prep school, I searched in a smaller league in Europe, a lot of league. I watched for all the overager, maybe if someone stood out, and I fall on this guy. So he's a draft plus one, an overager from Russia, Dmitri Rashevsky. I think he qualifies as pretty hidden. I think many of you are not going to be aware of him. He doesn't have the profile picture. Not many people saw his profile, and he's not on the central scouting list in the NHL. And I'm going to admit this is something I want to put on my to-do list for next year. I want to get better with those overager, have a better understanding of those guys who are the one that bust. So I'm going to look and maybe study past history in previous draft. There's a few things that I would really like to have answer for. So let's say a guy that is draft plus one or a draft plus two. What's the difference in success rate between plus one and plus two? And also which league are having a lot of success. So that's kind of the beauty in the draft. You want to find edges where you can get some very good value. And I already start digging into those overager, and I noticed really quickly Nashville, man, those guys were onto something. I think they have three main guys on their roster that are overager. So they took Craig Smith, Matthias Ekholm, and Victor Arvidsson. All of those guys are overager. So I think they were onto something maybe earlier than other teams, and they really made it count. And the funny thing about it is that all three of those guys, all of them are 4th round pick. So incredible value there. So I guess the moral of the story is do not overlook those overager. You can find some crazy good value in there. Let's get back to the main topic. Sorry, I got carried away a little bit here. But he is 6'1" and 165 pounds. And this is something I like to watch for older player. I want to make sure they're not dominating in junior because they're stronger and faster than everyone. And he's not that strong physically. He still has room to grow. Let's take a look at his stat, and this is where it is really interesting. So last year, he played 24 games in the MHL, only 4 goals and 1 assist in 24 games. I have no clue what happened last year, and this is kind of a blind spot for me. I'm not super, I don't have a good feel about the MHL. I don't know that league that well. But this year, oh my, completely different story. 44 goals in 61 games, 74 points. He was one of the top scorers in all the MHL. Pretty impressive stuff, and I'm someone that put a lot of focus on the progression. I like players that are trending up, and this is one of the craziest progression rate from a year to another. He definitely got my attention with that, and the first reaction I had, well, is it because he was playing on a crazy good team with good line mates? And after looking 10 games on him, I can say that it's really not a product of him playing on a good team with good line mates. He played a bunch later in the year with this guy who was pretty good, but other than that, earlier in the year, he was playing with a bunch of very average players. So I think he is the main reason why that team was decent and they made the playoff, and he is the guy that made everything click. He did not get help from other players. A few people asked me to bring back the premium tool on Elite Prospects, so I'm looking into draft plus one, minimum 15 game, and all league MHL history. And one thing that was impressive for me was the total amount of goals. So 46 goals, including the playoff. This is the highest amount for any player in his draft plus one in the MHL. So this was impressive. In terms of point per game, was a bit less impressive. I think it was around 30-ish. Alright, so let's start the video. Let's roll some clips, and you will be looking at number 11. And I'm gonna start with the thing I like the most about his game, and it's something pretty unusual. At least it's rare that this type of stuff really catch my attention, but I think he was doing a very good job at reading and reacting quickly. So I think he processed the game at a high speed. He's got some high-speed internet cable in his head. I know this is a term maybe that is overused nowadays, but he's a good problem solver. Whenever he needs to take a decision quick, whether it is to deke a guy or read a passing lane, find an open guy, usually he's able to do it quick. And this is something very powerful in my opinion, because it has a positive impact on honestly the rest of his game. So keep that in mind while we watch different categories in the rest of the video. So whenever we're gonna watch his shot, his stick handling, his playmaking ability, and even defensively, you're gonna notice that his ability to process things quick kind of elevate his game to a whole new level. We're gonna take a look at a few clips, and I'm gonna slow it down. I think it's gonna be easier to explain for me what I like about and what I have in mind about the read and react. If we take this clip, for example, it's a simple zone exit on the power play, and he's gonna want to take the middle of the ice, but the other player is gonna do a good job preventing that, and he's gonna adjust on the fly really quickly. And at this point, you should start to notice that he's got some very good puck skills. And whenever you have a guy with elite puck skill, if he also has the brain to go with it, it makes for a very deadly combination. If we take this clip for example, he's in a very tough spot in the corner, but they're gonna do the mistake of going at him in a straight line aggressively, and with him you cannot do that. He's gonna eat you up. There's so many times that I thought he would get hit, but last second he's able to dig the guy. And I said earlier that his ability to process quick also has an impact on his playmaking ability. So you're gonna notice there's a guy in the slot that's pretty open, but he's gonna notice real quick that the defense is collapsing on this guy, and he's gonna be able to spot the other layer, the defenseman, that is completely wide open. This is another interesting clip here. The game is tied 3-3 with only 30 seconds left in the game, and he's gonna receive a pass in the slot, and look how quick he's able to process that and find the open guy right beside the net. And also notice how he took the time to sell the shot. He's hiding really well his intention. His whole body is screaming shot, and he was able to make that pass. So this is a very impressive clip. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of good finisher on that team. He made so many great passes this year, but they're never able to finish. Let's move to a different category, and we already saw a few glimpses of that, but he's got very good stick handling, and I would almost say that he's an elite stick handler. I think what I like the most about his stick handling is just his natural ability to beat guy one-on-one. So we saw earlier when you rush him head first, he's deadly with that. He can dig one guy, and I like those players because whenever you're able to beat the first wave, especially when the defense is already set in the zone, if you beat the first one, after that all the other player needs to take a decision and adjust the defensive scheme. And usually once you've beat the first guy, the defensive structure, this is where it starts to go downhill real quick, because everyone now needs to go a bit more freestyle. They lose their structure a little bit, and this is where everything open up. Another area where I think he's using very well is good puck skill is whenever he tries to attack the middle of the ice, and there's time where he's completely surrounded by 2-3 players. There's stick everywhere, and he's still confident in his puck ability. He keeps good control of the puck whenever he's in deep traffic.
Динамовцы не забросят шайбу, тогда 2 минуты Калиниченко проведет на скамейке. Хоккеисты Алмаза.
Да, ну мы об этом уже говорили, но посмотрим. Все-таки Рашевский сейчас прорывается к воротам.
Another area of the game where his stick handling is super useful, it's for transition. So whenever he's exiting his zone or entering the other zone, so whenever you give him open ice, he won't have any problem just deking 1 or 2 guys if it's necessary, zigzagging his way to the other zone, and this is pretty useful to have a winger that is able to do that. Usually this is more of the center job to go in transition, the neutral zone, carrying the puck, but he's able to take this burden away from the center. So personally, I like those players that are a little bit more involved. They touch the puck more often, and they don't have really bad shift. Every shift they're doing a little something on the ice, and I like those players. Let's move along and watch another category. Let's take a closer look at his playmaking ability, his vision, and this is something that took me by surprise a little bit, because when you watch his stats, he finished with 46 goals and only 30 assists. So I was labeling him more as a pure sniper, a shooter, but the more I watch and the more I start to realize that he was a very good playmaker. And the way I do those scouting report, I'm sure most of you know already, but usually I'm gonna watch 10 games, sometime more, but with him I only watch 10 games. But since it was in the MHL, I made sure to only focus on stronger teams. So there's 4 games in the playoff later in the year, and most of the game are against teams that made the playoff. So there's only one game, I think it's a team that was slightly outside the playoff. And in my process in evaluating every player, I am not tracking, let's say for the pass, the guy made 30 passes, he completed 25, 10 of those were in high danger area. No, I'm not doing that, and I have a ton of respect for the people that are doing that. It takes a lot of time. But now that I've made almost 50 scouting reports this year and last year, I'm starting to get really good at knowing how many clips I should be getting, let's say for the passing. If I watch 10 games, how many clips I should be getting for a good playmaker, for a poor playmaker. And with him, I was shocked with the amount of good pass he was able to complete, especially in high danger area. So I kind of suspect that if someone was to, let's say, track the advanced stat, he would be doing extremely well in the playmaking department. And as most of you are probably aware, there's a lot of luck involved in hockey, especially in the point department. And if you look the clip above from the 10 game that I've watched, there's some really prime passes that he made that were not able to result in assists. just simply not good enough finisher on the team. So I guess where I'm getting at is that it's possible, and I'm pretty sure that he's a much better playmaker, and if that's the case, it makes him even more interesting as a player. Those are a few clips that I had in mind when I was saying he's playing with very poor finisher. I mean, he's doing everything here. Look how he's selling his shot again, and you gotta respect his shot. He scored 46 goals. He has a nasty release. So the goalie, every time he's making that fake shot, the goalie's gonna bite every single time because he's got a very dangerous shot, and the pass was perfect, yet the player missed it.
Да, без смены.
А вот это правильное решение тренера Крыльев.
This is another interesting clip on the power play this time, and he was a beast this year on the power play. I think he scored 18 goals. He's really strong on the power play, and he carried the team. Really, he was the guy driving everything offensively. Let's rewatch this clip, and I'll admit the pass was pretty easy, but what I like about this play is what he did before the pass. So what I want you to do, and it might be a bit hard to see for you, but simply look at his head and where he is looking at, because what he's doing right now is trying to manipulate the defense with his eyes. The last thing I want you to take a look is the stick placement of the player, the three players that are in a straight line defensively. Notice how two of them are blocking the center of the ice, but there's one annoying dude that's blocking the passing lane from the guy close to the net, and the only thing he's doing right now, he want to try to bait this guy to switch his stick offside, and as soon as he does it, bam, he reads and reacts like I said earlier. I also have this pass that I think is showing pretty nice level of creativity, and over the past 2 years, I think I've only seen Lafrenière do something like that, and Trevor Zegras. Those are the only two guys that were able to complete an alley-oop pass like that. Before we move on to a new category, I just want to recap the playmaking part. So for me, it does check a whole lot of boxes. First one, it's the pure volume of pass he was able to make in high danger area. After that, I like that he's able to see in traffic, so he's able to spot the guy backdoor at the second or third level. He's also really crafty in the way that he hides his intention, whether it's a fake shot or simply not looking at the guy before making the pass. And lastly, he's got a pretty nice touch of creativity to go on top of that. So I think that's a pretty good recipe for success in terms of a good playmaker.
Скорости нет. Сейчас набирает скорость Большаков, оставляет на партнера Жабреев.
Вроде бы шайбу потерял, но подхватывает Яневский. Но можно было бросать-то сразу.
И как увидел в углу площадки Большакова, вывел его на пустые. Северсталь ведь выбыла из борьбы за континентальной хоккейной лиги, не попали в плей-офф. Череповчане.
Ох, какой!
Time to change category, and so far everything has been super positive. A lot of nice stuff I had to say about him, but now we get to a point where we might hit a wall and make all the nice stuff irrelevant, and it's his skating. He is not a terrible skater, but he's also not a good skater, so I think he falls in the middle. He's more of an average skater. In the NHL, when you're watching him skate, it's not a big problem. You're never gonna say, oh, this guy is way too slow, but I think it's more when you're gonna increase the level, he kind of is missing that top gear and the overall raw speed. He's got a little bit of quickness, and sometimes he wins race just because he get a head start. He's sharp mentally. The good thing he has on his side, though, he's got a pretty good motor, and most of the time he's always moving his feet, so it's rare that you're gonna cut him completely static on the ice. In the next episode, I'm probably gonna do it on Tyson Forster, since he was pretty popular in the last vote, and he's an example of a player that struggled with his skating and is also way too often completely static, flat-footed on the ice, not moving. At least with Rashevsky, he's moving a lot, and I think he navigates the ice pretty well, so he's always around the puck. Skating is such a hard aspect to really nail down when you're evaluating player, and for example, last year, Bobby Brink is a good example. I really could not get past his skating. For me, it was awful, and I really couldn't get past that. And surprise, this year at the World Junior, he was moving extremely well on the ice. Another example would be Matthias Maselli. And when I watched him last year in the USHL, I thought he was just a small average skater. But he's another one of those players that made huge improvement in his skating this year, and I did not saw that coming. So I try to be a bit more open-minded now, because things can change quickly, but still it's such an important part of the game. Sometimes it's hard to go past that. And in Montreal, we also have a good example with Nick Suzuki. At first, I was a bit skeptical because he was missing that top gear and he was playing at a slow pace, but I guess when you're such a smart player, doesn't really matter. You also have guys that are so skilled like David Perron that are able to make it work even if they're not blazing fast. In the end, his skating makes him more of a riskier pick because improvement are going to be needed for him to be successful at the next level. He's also from Russia, so the KHL might be another problem. It might not be that easy just to bring him in North America. It's possible that the KHL make it hard on us. And also we've seen in the past for the development, it's a bit harder in this league. We've seen with Podkolzin last year. It's possible that the player is stuck on a fourth line playing 3-5 minutes per game, and it might hurt his development long term. Let's finish the video on a positive note. So 46 goal, I saved that for last. We're going to take a look at his shooting ability, and he's got a very good quick release, lightning quick release I would say. And sometimes you have players that have a good shot but are simply not using it very often. But with him, he likes to shoot the puck, and he finished the year with over 5 shots per 20-minute play. So when you adjust the shooting per ice time, he was one of the best in the league. He was higher than Amirov. If I remember correctly, I think Amirov was around 4.8 shots per 20-minute played. He was also in the top of the MHL. Now in terms of NHL player comparison, he's not in the NHL yet, but for some reason he reminds me a little bit of Alex Newhook. Of course, a weaker version and a slower one. He's not as fast, not even close. And maybe a little bit of Tomas Tatar. For the NHL projection and what I think he could be, well, the first thing I'm going to say is that there's a very high chance that he never makes it to the NHL, so it's very possible that he plays in the KHL or the American League. But the thing I like about him is that if he does make it and all the stars are aligned, there's some high-end skills there, and it's possible that he makes a top 6. So that's what I like. He's more of a boom or bust pick for me. And the way I see it, if you keep on gambling on those guys with maybe higher upside, you don't have to be right as often, because there's a huge difference in terms of asset value if you compare those guys in the top 6 versus the guy on the bottom 6. Anyways, I just like this player, and for some reason this year there's not a lot of players that I like in the draft after the first round, and he was one of the few. But I have to admit, the MHL is not a league that I'm super familiar with. I'm not overly confident with that league. Overager as well, that's another subject. And there's also one guy that I follow on Twitter. He's kind of the Russian expert for prospect, and he made a top 70 list a few weeks ago, and on that list Rashevsky was not even there. So he's not on this guy list. He's not on the central scouting list, so maybe I am completely off with this guy. But I'm just gonna trust my feeling and my ability to evaluate player, and if I make a mistake, well, I'm gonna adjust in the next year and learn from that. This is it for this one. If you like this episode on Hidden Gem, give it a thumbs up. The next one's probably gonna be on Tyson Forster. Bye.